This video is brought to you by Drone Mask. More about them later in the video. Okay, so we're checking out the Diatone Roma F7 in this video. I did a previous video where I put the build together. Basically, I got the power kit version, which is basically a fully built drone except no DJI system. So I added the air unit and the camera and also my Express LRS receiver. But the drone pretty much came fully built, just no FPV system, and it also came with a PID tune. So just a really brief overview of the specs. F722 flight controller, it's like the Mamba Mark II. Does come with the DJI plug, of course, with a second voltage regulator for the DJI system. And the ESC is a 65 amp 32-bit ESC. I think it's up to 128 kilohertz. The motors are the 2808 1100 kV motors, and I'm running it on 6S. So the build, I think, came out to around 605 grams, if I remember correctly, without the camera and the battery. I flew it with a 1300 6S because of basically not a lot of space here to put a battery, and we'll talk about that in a second. They do recommend a 1600 to an 1800 6S, but I don't have a battery that size. I have this 1300, then the next size up I have is a 3300, so I was not able to use that because the battery that is just too big, so it doesn't fit here behind the camera. As you can see, the antennas get in the way, or the camera gets in the way. Now the frame itself, basically it's like a squished X type frame. It geometrically resembles the F7, I'm sorry, the F5 and the F6. So basically longer, thicker arms to accommodate the bigger motors and the bigger props. But the frame geometry is essentially the same. So the flight characteristics are fairly similar as well. Very well balanced in the air in terms of the pitch and the roll axis. Whereas on some of the other 7-inch ones with the dead cat frames, it's the pitch axis is a little, in my opinion, not as stable as the squished X geometry. It's kind of hard to tell, especially if you have a good tune. Both the tunes are pretty good in this one and in the Chimera 7, which I'll show you here in a second. But if you're looking for good flight characteristics in the air, this has it with the PID tune and the nice frame geometry. However, because of the frame geometry, with the GoPro at this angle here, which is, I think it's less than the recommended, but you know, when you go to 28 degrees, which is what they recommend, you're going to be going really fast. And I want to, you know, kind of fly this more sort of medium speed, not necessarily slow cruising, but not super fast. If you go to 28 degrees, you're going to be going really fast. So I did want, this is kind of the angle that I like to fly my 7 inches at with a good cruising speed. And I think this is probably around 20 degrees, roughly, maybe a little bit less. And then the FPV camera is also in the same angle. So however, with this angle, you see a lot of the props in the view at the bottom of the frame. Also in the FPV view, the props are definitely in the middle of the frame of your FPV feed. So if you don't like those characteristics, you're going to have to go to a dead cat frame. And then obviously you don't want that showing up in your HD video. You're going to have to angle the camera back even further. And then also will reduce the geometry of the battery that you can put back here. So just comparing it to the Chimera 7, it's going to be hard to get all this in frame, but if you measure, let me just measure here, the deck of the Chimera 7 for battery, it's roughly 6 inches by the ruler. So I've flown the 3300 on the Chimera 7, no problem, it fits here. And this battery is about 5.5 inches. So that 3300 fits on the Chimera 7, no problem, because it's got a very long deck here. And of course, with the dead cat geometry, no props in view on the FPV feed or on the GoPro feed. And if we measure the amount of battery space on the top deck for the Roma F7, it's about 4 inches. So it's roughly 2 inches less. So you're limited in terms of what kind of batteries you can put on here in terms of length. If there are batteries that are in the 1800 6S range, and maybe actually something maybe even be a little bit bigger, like say 2300 or 2500 milliamp hour 6S, that's a maximum of 4 inches in length. Width and height are okay. I couldn't find any batteries that were that geometry. So if you're looking for more flight time than I got on the 1300, which is probably what you want for a 7-inch, you're going to probably have to try and find a battery that fits that geometry and accommodate the length of the battery, the top deck for the battery, and the camera angle that you want as well. So those are the factors. Now, obviously, with a small battery like this, the 1300, I only got about 5 minutes of flight time. Obviously, on a 7-inch, you're going to want to go for more. So again, you're going to probably want to try and find a bigger battery to get, your 10 to 15 minutes of flight time, which is what you're going to want for something like a 7-inch. So now a message from the sponsor of this video, Drone Mask. Drone Mask is an FPV goggle accessory for your DJI camera drones and other camera drones. If you're looking for an FPV-like experience from your camera drones, Drone Mask is definitely an accessory you want to check out. The unique lens of Drone Mask gives you an immersive experience that gives you 4 times the resolution of your normal screen. Additionally, the design of Drone Mask blocks out all light, so you have a completely immersive experience. Also, the goggle has a very wide opening. It can be used with or without your glasses, and the part that touches your face is a very soft cloth, so it's very comfortable to wear. So if you fly camera drones often and are looking for an FPV-like experience, be sure to check out Drone Mask. The link will be in the video description, and we thank Drone Mask for sponsoring this video. Now, regarding the very large 2808 motors, when you look at this compared to a 2806.5, it's 1.5 millimeters taller in terms of the stator. But that taller stator does seem to draw more current at higher RPM. So when you're in the higher end of the throttle and the motor is spinning faster, it draws more current than the 2806.5 motor. And so basically when you're at under 50% throttle, like if you're cruising around 30-40% throttle, the differences aren't, in terms of current draw, seem to me about the same as the 2806.5, but you get obviously more top end power with the taller stator, but way more current draw. So if you're using this with, like, say, a 6S lithium ion pack and if you're doing more throttle punch outs, you basically get a lot of voltage sag as you go above 50% throttle. So if that's something, if you're going to be using lithium ion packs, this bigger motor is probably not going to be ideal for you, because your voltage just drops pretty fast as you go, every increment over 50%. So if you go, 55 or 60, 65, every additional 5% you're going over 50%, you're drawing more current, and the battery voltage drops even further. So that's something you're going to have to really watch if you're considering getting this motor. But if you're just cruising, I think it's pretty similar. So if you're in the low end of the throttle range with a similar size battery and all up weight as a build that's a 2806.5, I think you should expect similar flight time, perhaps just a touch less. It really depends on how you fly it. But I think it's mainly for people that are going to be aggressive on the throttle. You're going to want better batteries that are going to be able to handle the extra current draw from the bigger, taller motor. Anyway, for me, I think, I like the parts, the stack and the motors. I think that I would prefer to have these parts on a dead cat frame just for someone like me. I may move this over to the new Foxeer 7-inch frame that I think I'll be getting that pretty soon. If that's something that might interest you, let me know in the comments below, or if you suggest some other frame that I should try out these parts on, let me know down in the comments below. I think the 2808 motor has a lot of potential. I just want to put it on another framework. We use a bigger battery, because I'm not really sure how that's going to compare to the 2806.5 when you're using much larger batteries. And for sure, the just bigger motor can carry that extra weight no problem, because the 2806.5 can carry the 3300 pack no problem. I think I did a flight test with that in terms of time. I got something close to 20 minutes, like 19 minutes, I think. I did a flight test with that pack. So I would expect maybe something similar for this motor. I just don't have the frame to put it on. Let me know if you have any suggestions down in the comments below. That's going to do it for this one. If you got any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.